Hi, everybody. Ian Bremmer here, and a quick take to kick off your week. The latest on Iran. Couple developments. First, no surprise that Congress is having no impact in the ongoing war with Iran. The position of President Trump, twofold. First, that if you have a ceasefire, you reset the clock for the 60 days. You no longer need congressional authority. So, in principle, any war going forward, 59 days, you can have war, you can announce a ceasefire, and then a day later you can start war again. I guess that's the legal argument. Also, in a blockade, which is an act of war, but because Trump has called it a friendly blockade, you don't need Congress. So none of these things hold water. All of these things fly in the face of the way that war is intended to be engaged in, and the limits, the checks and balances on executive authority. Congress is ineffective and ineffectual on this count, and becoming more so with the president that isn't particularly interested in following those rules. So that is where we are. Having said that, there has been a new announcement by the president. Project Freedom sounds like the sort of thing that everyone would get in favor of. Who doesn't like a new project, and who doesn't like freedom? But what it's meant to be, at least what it was initially announced to be, was that American military vessels were going to escort the ships that are stuck in and around the Strait to get them out. A humanitarian mission, as President Trump put it, as opposed to directly opening the Strait. Immediately after that, there were two ships that were fired on in the Strait. And President Trump backed down, and now, as opposed to direct military vessels helping out, you're going to have the Americans providing information on what area of the Strait is passable, where there are mines, where there are not, and the U.S. calling on the Chinese to help in reopening the Strait. This is all over the map. President Trump continuing to be angry that he doesn't have an outcome that looks like an off-ramp. The Strait continues to be closed as a consequence. There has been internal military briefings with other potential operations, like sending through destroyers and forcing the Strait open. That is significantly escalatory. It would probably lead to the Iranians responding militarily. And so Trump is taking a softer, more incremental approach, but it's not going to lead to any new traffic getting goods and oil and gas and plastics and all the things that the world needs through the Strait. There's so far very little merchant vessel traffic in the Strait following these attacks. Some of the vessels that were heading for the Strait of Hormuz with U-turns directly after those two attacks were reported. You shouldn't expect that shipping volume through the Strait is going to change in the near term. You'd have to have either buy-in from Iran, or you'd need a significant naval deployment in the region, and neither of those things are happening. So the question is, are you going to get a deal? We've got a ceasefire. The Americans are not engaging in direct strikes against Iran. The ceasefire is also sort of holding between Israel and Hezbollah and Lebanon, though we continue to see drone strikes from Hezbollah. We continue to see tit-for-tat military strikes from the Israelis. They both blame the other for starting first, and reality is the Israelis have far, far greater military capabilities, but they're willing to keep engaging in limited strikes, which at this point have not prevented the ceasefire, the broader ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran from holding. People that are close to Trump increasingly believe the likelihood that the war will restart is growing. Certainly in Tehran, those that are close to the regime, and I'm not talking about the IRGC because they're not really talking to anyone externally, but the foreign minister and others believe that there is likely to be the war restarting by the United States, that the negotiations aren't going well, and at any point President Trump could just, as he has in previous negotiations, with no warning, no credible ultimatum, because we've blown through all of those, simply start striking again. I don't think that's baseline right now, but it's certainly plausible. And the danger here is that the Iranians still have lots of military capabilities. More than 50% of their missiles that they had from before the war, they still are estimated by the U.S. military to have and the capacity to launch them. They've got thousands and thousands of drones, and that doesn't just mean keeping the strait closed. It also means being able to target and destroy all sorts of critical infrastructure across the Gulf, which so far they have mostly restrained from doing. And that would be a big, big knock-on economic cost and consequence on top of the growing costs of all of this oil and plastic and gas and other things being off the market. And those costs, which we've already seen in the United States reflected with higher gas costs at the pump and diesel costs, but are soon going to be shortages and shortages experienced in different industries all over the world. It seems that Trump understands that and is prepared to accept it. He's counseling patience. He's saying oil prices are going to go higher, and that's fine, presumably with an understanding that the midterms are lost for him in any case, so you need to hold out for a win. The greater expectation that he is going to take those costs, the greater the likelihood that you're going to see military strikes restart. And certainly there are only more U.S. Special Forces heading into the region. And so the capability to engage in that war fighting is still very real. And Trump has been saying, even over the last few hours, should I blow the hell out of them or should I do a deal? You know, which way am I going to go? I'd rather do a deal, but maybe I'm not going to. He's getting frustrated. And the farther this goes on, the greater the likelihood that we're going to see more fighting. Anyway, the costs are massive. This continues to be by far the largest foreign policy mistake and the most consequential of Trump's administration, either first or second. I continue to be most worried that he's not getting great information, that so much of what I see from people that have conversations with him, domestic leaders and foreign leaders, internal advisors, donors, and the rest, it always starts with how smart he is, how great he is, how much he's winning. And then if there's any criticism, it is very, very careful, it's very cautious, and it's couched. And that's a horrible way to run anything, but it's a very dangerous way to be the leader of a country that is at war, because you can believe. I think that if I were Trump in this environment, I would believe that I'm doing better than I actually am. I'd believe that the Iranians are weaker, and that they're going to fold, they're going to capitulate, they're going to surrender, and all I need to do is keep at it. And yes, Trump is the one that has put that environment around himself, so he's ultimately responsible for it. But there's a lot of complicity, and there's a lot of internal competition for people that still want access to Trump and know that if they're tough and if they're hard and if they are directly honest about what's going on, that they aren't going to get the same sort of access going forward. And so it creates a vicious circle, which really, I think, decreases the quality of decision-making from one of the most powerful individuals on the planet, and that really leads to bad governance and mistakes. So anyway, that's where I think we are. I'd love this to be wrapping up soon. I'd love for the U.S. to declare victory and move on and end so much of the economic damage and the consequences that are occurring all over the world. I don't expect that. Let's see where we get. That's it for me, and I'll talk to you all real soon.